Okay, so hear me out. Every few months, some productivity guru drops a video called "I tried waking up at 4 a.m. for 30 days. They're standing there, in their pristine kitchen, talking about how the morning routine changed their life. Cold shower, journaling, gratitude, 10 minutes of breathwork. Very aspirational, very beige. And I always think, man, you have no idea what a real morning routine looks like. Because today we're talking about a guy whose morning routine involved deciding which city would still exist by sundown. And spoiler, a lot of them didn't make the cut. If you're new here, subscribe. We do history like this every week. Let's go. Before I get into the actual morning stuff, I need to tell you something about Genghis Khan that most people completely miss. It's something that actually reframes everything. Keep it in the back of your mind as we go, because it changes the whole picture. Let's start at the beginning. Not the morning routine beginning, the actual beginning. You cannot understand how this man started his days without understanding how his days were shaped by the first 20 years of his life. Which were, and I'm not exaggerating here, almost comically brutal. His name wasn't Genghis Khan, that came later. He was born Temujin, probably around 1162, on the Mongolian steppe, and the steppe is not a forgiving place. Like at all. This isn't rolling meadows and gentle breezes. This is one of the harshest environments on Earth. Freezing winters, scorching summers, no permanent shelter, food scarce. The Mongol tribes at this time were fragmented, constantly raiding each other, no unified anything, just chaos and survival, and whoever's horse is faster. His father Yasuge was a minor clan chief, not a nobody, but not a king either. When Temujin was around 9 years old, his father took him to find a bride. On the way back, Yasuge stopped to eat with some tatters. The tatters poisoned him. He died a few days later, and just like that, Temujin's entire world collapsed. The clan abandoned the family, just left a widow and her kids, out on the steppe, no protection, no food supply, no status. They survived by eating rats and roots and whatever else they could find. Temujin had a half-brother named Begder, who was competing with him for food and authority within the family. At some point, Temujin was maybe 11 or 12. He and his brother Kasar killed Begder, shot him with arrows. Their mother was furious. She compared them to wild dogs eating their own. It's one of the most unsettling moments in history. Just a kid already killing, already calculating. Not long after, a rival clan raided them and took Temujin prisoner. They put him in a wooden collar. He escaped, and the way he escaped involved help from an unlikely family and a riverbed. Reads like a movie. He was maybe 15. I'm telling you all of this because when we talk about his morning routine, what we're really talking about is the behavior and psychology of a man who was forged in genuine, unrelenting crisis from childhood. He didn't have the luxury of figuring himself out in his 20s. He was already fighting for survival before he was a teenager. By the time he started building his empire, he wasn't doing it from comfort. He was doing it because survival was the only mode he'd ever known. That context matters a lot. Now, the steppe itself, because this is where the morning routine actually lives. Forget everything you know about medieval warfare and medieval life when you think about the Mongols. The European model, castles, knights, siege warfare, feudal hierarchy, none of that applies. The Mongols were nomadic pastoralists. They didn't have cities. They didn't have fixed addresses. Their entire civilization was mobile. Everything they owned could be packed onto horses and moved in hours. Their homes were gairs, felt tents, basically that could be assembled and disassembled in under an hour. So what does a morning look like in that world? You wake up before dawn? Not because you set an intention the night before, but because the animals need tending and the scouts need sending. The whole operation needs to move. The Mongol military was not separate from civilian life. It was the same thing. Every man between roughly 15 and 70 was a soldier. Herding and hunting were training. The same skills you used to manage a flock across the steppe were the skills you used to manage a cavalry across a battlefield. Riding, archery, stamina, reading terrain. It was the same education. So Genghis Khan's morning wasn't a routine he designed. It was a routine that emerged from a life lived entirely in motion. He'd wake in his gur. His wives would be managing the household. Food in the morning was typically simple. Dried meat, maybe some arag, which is fermented mare's milk. Doesn't sound great, I know, but it's calorie dense, it's portable, and it does the job. These were not people spending 45 minutes making pour-over coffee. Every decision about food and time was optimized for survival. Then came the briefings. This is actually the part I find most fascinating, because Genghis Khan built something that almost no one else in the ancient world had, a functioning intelligence network. He wanted to know every morning, or as close to it as possible, what was happening across an enormous theater of operations. Where were his generals? What was the terrain doing? Where were the enemies? What were the supply lines? He had a system of riders called the Yam, a relay post system where messengers could cover enormous distances quickly. The empire eventually formalized this into something remarkably sophisticated. But even in the early conquest years, Genghis Khan had spies. He made decisions based on intelligence, not just instinct. That's not what most people picture when they imagine a Mongol warlord. Here's where it gets interesting. And a little dark. Sorry, Not sorry. Genghis Khan had what you might call a very specific philosophy about mornings and about days in general, which was essentially, the day is a problem to be solved, and every problem has a solution if you're willing to do what needs to be done. He was not sentimental about almost anything. One of his most famous quotes is, "It is not sufficient that I succeed. All others must fail." Historians debate the exact wording, but the sentiment that tracks perfectly with everything we know about how he operated. He had a process for making decisions that was, by the standards of his time, and honestly by a lot of modern standards, ruthlessly rational. He would convene councils called kurultai for major decisions, where he'd actually listen to advisors and generals before deciding. This is another thing people get wrong about him. He wasn't just a rage monster who conquered on vibes. He was strategic. He listened, he gathered input, and then he made a decision, and that decision was final. And if you got in the way of it, well, you didn't get in the way of it twice. His mornings, especially during campaigns, were essentially rapid-fire operational reviews. Where are we? What do we know? What are the options? What happens next? There's an account of him going through tactical reviews so quickly and decisively that his generals were sometimes still catching up. His mind worked fast, and he trusted his commanders to execute without needing their hands held. He gave his generals something that most ancient rulers didn't: autonomy. Once he set the strategic objective, he let them figure out how to achieve it. The result was a military machine that could adapt in real time, that could split into multiple columns and converge from unexpected directions, that could fake retreats, the famous feigned withdrawal, and then turn and destroy an enemy that thought it was winning. All of that starts in the morning. In the briefing, in the decisions made before most of the enemy's soldiers were even awake. Okay, I want to pause here for a second because I think there's a version of this video that just becomes a military history lecture, and that's not what I'm going for. So let me bring it back to something a little more human. What does it actually feel like to wake up as Genghis Khan? Set aside world domination for a moment. Strip it back. This is a man responsible for hundreds of thousands of soldiers. He had 4 principal wives, dozens of concubines, an enormous family, and a political structure built from scratch. He managed alliances with former enemies, administered vast conquered territories from China to Persia. He handled succession planning, knowing his empire's survival depended on a clear plan for after him. All this without phones, email, or modern communication. Everything ran on horses, human memory, and the threat of catastrophic consequences. That's a lot of weight to carry into a morning. Genghis Khan was not, by most historical accounts, a joyless person. He laughed. He had favorites among his advisors and generals. He was known to drink with his men. He valued loyalty almost to a fault. Once in his circle, he was genuinely loyal back, which made people follow him fanatically. He had a personality, preferences. He loved hunting, not just for food, but for the chase and strategy. He organized massive hunts, essentially military exercises in disguise. So, mornings probably held more warmth than humanity. Alongside all of the terror, let's talk about the terror part, because it would be irresponsible not to. Genghis Khan's campaigns resulted in the deaths of somewhere between 40 million and 60 million people. That's as much as 10% of the entire world population at the time. Some regions lost the majority of their population. Cities that had existed for centuries were leveled so completely they didn't recover for generations. Some never recovered. This wasn't accidental. It wasn't collateral damage. It was deliberate. The terror was a strategy. The Mongols understood something deeply psychological about warfare. If every city heard what happens to those who resist, a lot of those cities would just open their gates, surrender without a fight, saving soldiers and accelerating conquest. The violence was, in a horrible way, efficient. He'd send envoys ahead, giving a choice. Submit and be incorporated, retain your culture, merchants, religion, or resist, and face the full force of what comes next. A lot of people resisted. Every morning during a siege, Genghis Khan knew the day might end in destruction. He processed that as simply the cost of the objective. Either cold-blooded or a psychology we can barely understand. Maybe both. I don't know what to do with that. You're not supposed to fully resolve it. He was a nation builder and a mass killer. Those two things live in the same person. Good morning. There's something else about his mornings that's underrated. He was constantly learning. Temujin was illiterate for most of his early life. Mongols didn't have a script until he commissioned one. But illiteracy then didn't mean ignorance. He was voraciously curious. He sought advisors from every conquered culture. Chinese administrators, Muslim merchants, Christian monks. He didn't care where knowledge came from, only if it was useful. He had advisors who were human databases, memorizing law, logistics, engineering, medicine. He asked questions constantly. He wanted to understand how things worked. City administration, tax systems, siege warfare, engineering, agricultural techniques. He incorporated what worked, discarded what didn't. It was almost scientific empiricism, applied to empire building. So in the mornings, alongside military briefings, there were philosophical inquiries. What are we doing here? How do people govern themselves? What's their water system? What do they trade? Who are the important people? How do we make this function? The Pax Mongolica? The Mongol peace? was one of the most connected eras in history. The Silk Road functioned, ideas moved, technologies transferred between East and West. That's partly Genghis Khan's legacy too. Complicated, right? I want to spend a minute on something personal, his family life in the mornings. It rounds out the picture. His first wife, Bert, was kidnapped early in their marriage. He waged war to get her back. She returned pregnant. The question of Joki's father followed him, creating a succession crisis. Genghis Khan acknowledged Joki as his son, never publicly questioned it, but it was always there. Bert remained his principal wife for decades. She was formidable, politically astute, loyal, a partner. I think about that dynamic in the mornings. After 40 years, after everything they'd been through, two people who survived things most can't imagine, sharing a meal in a felt tent while an empire churned around them. There's something almost unbearably human about that. Amid all the chaos and blood, just two old people having breakfast. Near the end of his life, he died in 1227, probably in his early 60s, genuinely old for his lifestyle. He was on campaign in China when he died. The exact cause is debated, a fall illness or a wild theory. In those final months, he was still moving, still campaigning. He didn't retire. He kept going until he couldn't. You can call it compulsion, identity, or the only mode he knew. But the man did not stop. His burial was secret. His escort killed anyone they met so the location would never be known. His tomb has never been found. He left no monument, no Taj Mahal, no pyramid, just the world. Restructured, we see a conqueror. And yeah, that's fair. But when you zoom in, you see something else too. You see a system. An incredibly effective, brutal, incredibly human system. He didn't have a morning routine in the influencer sense. He had a morning practice in the truest sense. A discipline from decades where failure meant death. A slow decision meant your family starved, or enemies found you. The ruthlessness and curiosity were the same thing. The willingness to destroy a city and to learn from those you didn't. A total unsentimental commitment to effectiveness. To whatever actually works, inspiring or disturbing, I've gone back and forth. You don't have to admire him, but understanding him tells you something about human capacity. The capacity for extraordinary destruction and creation. Often in the same person, often in the same morning. If this is your first video, welcome. This is the kind of stuff we do here. I try to make history engaging. More like this are in the back catalog. Subscribe if you want more. It helps a lot. Drop a comment with who you want next. Tamerlane and Catherine the Great have morning routines that would make your head spin. If your morning routine is just coffee and staring at your phone, that's fine. You're doing fine. Genghis Khan would probably have conquered you, but you're doing fine. See you in the next one.